Imagine you're cruising down the highway and a car zooms up behind you, eager to pass. Who's responsible for making sure there's no crash? The answer, the overtaker. This simple idea is at the heart of Rule 13 in maritime law, which governs overtaking at sea. In this video, we'll break down Rule 13 for Gen Z, making sense of its logic, real-world impact, and why it matters whether you're on a yacht, a cargo ship, or even a kayak. Let's dive into the world of maritime overtaking and see why don't be that guy who cuts people off is more than just good manners, it's the law. Overtaking at sea is surprisingly common. Fast container ships pass slow bulk carriers, speedboats zip by fishing trawlers, and even massive tankers sometimes need to overtake others. Unlike cars, ships can't slam on the brakes, they need miles to stop or change course. That's why Rule 13 is so clear: the overtaking vessel must keep clear no matter what. This rule eliminates confusion and prevents deadly accidents, making sure everyone knows exactly who is responsible in overtaking situations. Rule 13 of the International Regulations for Preventing Collisions at Sea, COLREGS, is refreshingly simple. If you're overtaking another vessel, it's 100% your job to do it safely. No exceptions, no loopholes, and no excuses based on vessel type. The overtaking vessel always keeps clear, period. This straightforward approach is designed to remove any ambiguity about who must act to avoid a collision when passing another ship. No matter what other rules say about who gives way, whether you're a power-driven vessel, a sailboat, or a fishing boat, if you're overtaking, you must keep clear. Even if you're usually the stand-on vessel, overtaking makes you the give-way vessel. Rule 13 overrides the usual hierarchy, so your position, not your vessel type, determines your responsibility. This ensures that everyone knows exactly what to do when passing another ship. Legal word notwithstanding in Rule 13 means despite or regardless of. Even if you're a sailboat, which normally has right-of-way over power vessels, if you're overtaking, you must keep clear. This rule trumps others like Rule 18, which sets the general hierarchy of vessel types, so no matter your vessel, if you're overtaking, the responsibility is yours. Picture a fast sailboat overtaking a slow-moving cargo ship. Normally, sailboats have right-of-way over power-driven vessels, but as soon as the sailboat is overtaking, Rule 13 takes over. The sailboat becomes the give-way vessel and must keep clear until it is completely passed and clear of the cargo ship. This example shows how Rule 13 changes the usual rules based on the situation, not the vessel type. A lot of people think, I'm in a sailboat, so I always have right-of-way over motorboats. That's not true when overtaking. If you're overtaking another vessel, even as a sailboat, you must keep clear. Your vessel type doesn't matter, your position relative to the other vessel is what counts. The overtaking rule is absolute and applies to everyone. How do you know if you're overtaking? Rule 13 says you're overtaking if you're coming up from more than 22.5 degrees abaft the beam of another vessel. In simple terms, if you're approaching from behind, in a 135-degree arc stretching from 22.5 degrees off the port quarter to 22.5 degrees off the starboard quarter, you're overtaking. At night, if you can only see the other vessel's white stern light and not their red or green side lights, you're in the overtaking zone. Ships display navigation lights to help identify their position and direction. If you see only a white stern light and no red or green side lights, you're overtaking. This visual test is a quick way to confirm your situation at night. If you see a white light and a green or red light, you might be in a crossing situation instead. Always use the navigation light test to determine your responsibility. Every vessel has a beam, which is its widest point. If you draw a line perpendicular to the ship's center line at the beam, then go 22.5 degrees back toward the stern, everything behind that line is the overtaking zone. This 135-degree arc is where Rule 13 applies. Understanding this geometry helps you quickly identify overtaking situations, even in tricky conditions. Imagine you're on a ferry at night and see another vessel ahead showing only a white light. No red or green, just white. You're overtaking and must keep clear. If you saw a white light and a green light, you'd be seeing the vessel's starboard side, which could mean a crossing situation. The navigation light test is your best friend for making the right call. Some people think that if they're approaching from a slight angle, they're not overtaking but crossing. But if you're coming from more than 22.5 degrees behind the beam, you're still overtaking even if it feels like you're coming from the side. The 22.5 degrees threshold is the dividing line. Use the navigation light test. If you can't see side lights, you're overtaking. Rule 13 says that if you're in any doubt about whether you're overtaking, you must assume that you are and act accordingly. This means you keep clear even if you're not 100% sure. At sea, visibility can be poor and angles can be hard to judge. The rule removes guesswork and encourages safe, decisive action. This part of Rule 13 is like defensive driving. It's better to keep clear when you didn't absolutely have to than to assume you have right-of-way and cause a collision. Maritime investigations consistently rule against vessels that assumed they weren't overtaking when the situation was ambiguous. When in doubt, play it safe and keep clear. Two vessels are converging at night. The officer on watch can't tell if they're overtaking or crossing. Is the other vessel 20 degrees abaft the beam or 25 degrees? Rule 13C says, assume you're overtaking and keep clear. This approach prevents collisions and legal trouble, making the seas safer for everyone. A common mistake is waiting to see what the other vessel does before deciding if you're overtaking. That's the wrong approach. You need to make the determination immediately and act accordingly. Hesitation causes collisions. Rule 13 forces decisive action. If in doubt, you keep clear. Once you're the overtaking vessel, you can't change your status by altering course or position. Even if the relative bearing changes and it looks like you're now in a crossing situation, you're still responsible for keeping clear until you're completely past and clear of the other vessel. This prevents confusion and ensures ongoing safety. Phrase "finally passed and clear" is intentionally vague because it depends on vessel sizes, speeds, and sea conditions. Generally, you're considered passed and clear when you're ahead of the other vessel, a safe distance away laterally, and there's no risk of collision if either vessel maintains course. For large ships, this could mean being 1–2 miles ahead and well separated. Imagine you start overtaking a vessel from behind on their left side. As you draw alongside, the relative bearing changes and it looks like you're now in a crossing situation. But since you started as the overtaking vessel, you remain responsible for keeping clear until you're well past and clear. This rule prevents last-minute confusion and accidents. Fast yacht overtakes a slow cargo ship starting from the port quarter. As the yacht draws alongside, there's minimal lateral separation. The yacht skipper thinks they're now side by side and different rules apply. Wrong, the yacht is still the overtaking vessel and must not cut ahead or cross the bow until well past and clear. Cutting in front too early is a common cause of collisions. Speedboat overtakes a fishing vessel. After getting slightly ahead, the speedboat turns toward shore, crossing in front of the fishing vessel's bow. The fishing vessel has to take emergency action to avoid collision. The speedboat is at fault because it was still the overtaking vessel and not yet finally past and clear. Cutting across the bow too soon violates Rule 13. Some think that once they're alongside or slightly ahead, they're free to turn wherever they want. That's not the case. You must be well ahead and laterally clear before you're released from overtaking responsibilities. Turning across the other vessel's bow while still close is exactly what Rule 13 prohibits. While Rule 13 puts the main responsibility on the overtaking vessel, the vessel being overtaken still has duties. They must maintain a proper lookout, monitor for collision risk, and avoid sudden, unpredictable course changes. If the overtaken vessel suddenly turns across the bow of the overtaker, they can share blame in a collision. Overtaking in narrow channels has extra rules. Rule 9 requires you to sound signals and get consent from the overtaken vessel before passing. Even though Rule 13 makes you responsible for keeping clear, Rule 9 adds procedural steps in confined waters. Always follow both rules in these situations. In traffic separation schemes, TSS, overtaking vessels must keep clear according to Rule 13, but also comply with TSS rules about staying in lanes and not impeding traffic. These extra requirements help manage busy shipping lanes and prevent accidents in high-traffic areas. If vessels lose sight of each other in fog or heavy weather during an overtaking situation, Rule 19 takes over with different requirements. Rule 13 only applies when vessels are in sight of one another. In restricted visibility, always follow the specific rules for those conditions to stay safe. Recreational motorboat doing 25 knots approaches a fishing trawler at 6 knots from directly astern. The motorboat wants to pass, but there's little room due to shallow water. The correct action is to keep clear and pass at a safe distance, even if it means slowing down and waiting. Zipping past with minimal clearance, creating wakes that rock the trawler, violates Rule 13, even if no collision occurs. Container ship overtakes an oil tanker in open ocean, both on nearly parallel courses with about 2 miles of lateral separation. The container ship must ensure it passes safely and not make any course changes that create collision risk until well past and clear. Turning toward the tanker's track too soon, even miles apart, is a Rule 13 violation. Sailboat doing 12 knots approaches a motorboat at 8 knots from 30 degrees abaft the motorboat's starboard beam. This is an overtaking situation, even though sailboats usually have right-of-way. Rule 13 overrides this and the sailboat must keep clear. If the sailboat insists on right-of-way and a collision occurs, the sailboat is at fault. Violating Rule 13 can have serious consequences: civil liability, criminal prosecution, license suspension, insurance denial, environmental fines, and even vessel detention. Maritime collisions can lead to catastrophic outcomes, including loss of life and massive property damage. Rule 13 violations are clear-cut and leave little room for excuses in investigations. Some think Rule 13 doesn't apply to their vessel type. Maybe they're in a fishing boat, a vessel restricted in maneuverability, or even a kayak. But Rule 13 applies to all vessels overtaking others regardless of type or size. If you're overtaking, you keep clear. There are no exceptions. Another mistake is thinking that if you're only a little faster, it's not really overtaking. But overtaking is determined by position, not speed. Even if you're just 0.5 knots faster and it takes an hour to pass, you're still the overtaking vessel and fully responsible for keeping clear. Some overtaking vessels expect the slower vessel to move over, but the vessel being overtaken has no obligation to change course or speed to accommodate you unless special rules apply, like in narrow channels. They maintain their course and speed. It's your job to pass safely. Being alongside is not the same as being finally passed and clear. You must be well ahead and laterally separated before you're released from overtaking responsibilities. Cutting in front too early is a common cause of collisions and a clear violation of Rule 13. You can't just decide to stop overtaking and expect the other vessel to become the overtaking vessel. If you initiated overtaking, you must complete it safely or drop back far enough that you're clearly no longer in an overtaking situation. This usually means slowing down significantly. Some believe the rules don't really apply to small boats, but COLREGS apply to all vessels on the high seas and connected waters. Whether you're in a kayak or an aircraft carrier, if you're overtaking, you keep clear. Size doesn't grant exemptions. Help remember Rule 13, use the acronym OVER. Overtaker's responsibility, always keep clear. Visual check, seeing only stern light. You're overtaking, eliminate doubt when uncertain, assume overtaking, remain responsible until finally passed and clear. These tips make it easy to recall the essentials of safe overtaking. A simple way to remember overtaking at night: all white overtaking, see green or red, different situation instead. If you see only a white stern light, you're overtaking and must keep clear. If you see red or green, you might be in a crossing situation and different rules apply. If you're studying maritime law, training to be a deck officer, or just interested in global commerce, Rule 13 is fundamental. Every time you order something online, it probably traveled on a ship that had to navigate overtaking situations. As autonomous shipping develops, Rule 13 is being programmed into AI navigation systems, making it even more important to understand. Recreational boating is growing worldwide. If you ever operate a boat, even a small one, understanding overtaking rules could literally save your life and others. The physics of maritime collisions are unforgiving, and I didn't know the rules isn't an acceptable defense. Rule 13 is for everyone on the water. Here's the bottom line: if you're overtaking, approaching for more than 22.5 degrees behind the beam, you must keep clear. This applies to all vessel types, no exceptions. If you can only see the stern light at night, you're overtaking. Not sure, assume you are and keep clear. Stay responsible until well past and clear. Don't cut in front too early and always accommodate the vessel being overtaken. Violations can have catastrophic consequences. Rule 13 is elegant in its simplicity but critical in its application. While some maritime rules are complex, Rule 13 is straightforward. If you're passing someone, don't hit them and don't make them take action to avoid you. It's the maritime equivalent of don't be a jerk when passing on the highway. Mastering Rule 13 means you're contributing to safer seas for everyone.